if you still had a mortgage on your home, so you didn't have the deed outright, there was still a mortgage involved that had to be paid off, could you still put the home in a trust?
You can. Yeah, there are only certain types though. There are several different types of trusts. Not every trust is the same, and certain types you can do that with, certain types you can't. So again, we'd have to have that conversation, first of all, what are your goals? Second of all, what assets do you have? Third of all, what type of a document, what type of trust is the best for your unique situation? Because there are so many different types, so many different goals that people have. Some work for some people, some work for different don't work for others. So I mean, the short answer is yes. The long answer is maybe it depends. And it's kind of like that's everything in the law. It depends. Sometimes it's the answer is yes, sometimes it's no, but it depends on the circumstances. Everyone's unique, so I truly believe there's not a one size fits all. What works again for your neighbor may not work for you, may not work for your parents, and it's really also about the stage of life that you're in. Whether you're young and have a long life expectancy ahead of you, whether you're facing illness, whether you're older. You mentioned special needs children, who your beneficiaries are going to be. Do you need to plan for more than just yourself, or is that enough? So there's a lot of different facts that go into making that decision. And it's really a conversation, and it can change throughout your life. So you want to make sure that you don't just do a will, stick it in a drawer and never look at it, or do a trust and never re-examine it. So there are a lot of things I think that go into that relationship building. And my goal is to have a relationship with my clients so that if something changes in their lives, they're comfortable calling and saying, "Hey, I need to talk about this," and not worrying, that their attorney will not be available, or that they won't be able to get a meeting, or that sort of thing. So I think having that relationship is really important, and that comfort level that if you have a question, you ask it, because it's important to make sure that everything is working the way you want it to.
Yeah, absolutely. So if somebody wanted to plan for the future, let's say I want to plan to make sure that my estate doesn't go into probate. Like I want to have everything pre-planned so that everybody out there listening understands when something goes into probate. Can you define why it goes into probate and how to avoid that happening after death?
Sure. So probate varies state to state. In Pennsylvania, probate is not a bad word. Probate is simply a process of getting your estate finalized through the court system. And there are certain types of estates that require that court involvement, and there are certain types of estates that don't. If you have a will, one of the misconceptions people has is, if I have a will, I won't have to go through probate. That's absolutely inaccurate. A will has to go through probate. And if you die without anything at all, that has to go through probate as well. So while you may avoid probate, you may not avoid the time that's involved in administering a estate, just because you have a trust. So there are things to consider there. Maybe probate isn't a bad word for your family. Maybe there is not a reason to avoid it. So avoiding probate is not necessarily the best solution in every circumstance, and it's not necessarily a bad word. A lot of people listen to some podcasts from international speakers on estate planning, and they say you absolutely want to avoid probate. If you're living in California, I would say yes, we absolutely want to avoid probate. Probate in California is not something anyone wants to go through. Pennsylvania, it's a little bit less stringent. I mean, there's still a process and there's still fees involved, but it's not necessarily something that everybody should avoid or should want to avoid. Now, owning properties in multiple states is another really good reason to avoid probate, because if you own properties in multiple states, you're going to have to go through probate in multiple states. But again, it goes back to, what assets do you have? What are your goals as to avoiding probate is a good idea or not necessary?